Nice catching it. Good job, Sky. Good job.
Yeah. So guess what? I just finished the spine flexing, all the autumn
Ooh.
series, but the autumn qigong set is like it's going part of this master qigong bundle, and I
Okay.
was just up, sitting up in the mountains and off the grid, and now I'm so on the grid. And
Your
this is
tax
because
ID number just showed up on your.
yeah. Oh, everyone look out! I'm heading out to Pensacola, Florida. I'll be doing some stuff. I'll be in Pensacola, Gainesville, Jacksonville, and then I'm coming to the Bay to do live workshops and um, live training and body work and all that stuff. I'll be
Sweet.
very, very excited about that.
Hmm.
California, all over,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah,
that
it'd be
will
good to
be
have you back.
October. It's be
October.
cool.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna be here for mostly for like the month of October?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. I want to do a plug right now for my Qigong Master Bundle. So there's a lot of I'm even getting subscription fatigue, and I'm a subscription site. But so I figured Qigong is what is so beneficial,
That's
and especially now.
yeah,
And
especially.
and but I upgraded it, so I'm doing a lot of the stillness work. Self-care is on there, and a lot of the tips and tricks that are actually like Qigong from the martial arts perspective, which shows it in different levels, because martial arts, you do Qigong when you're a child, and then you do it all the way up through an adult, and it's different, but it's the same exercises. So
Yeah.
I'm showing it in all these different ways. So if y'all are wondering why I'll show like 3 or 4 different levels of like the Baduan Jin
Yeah.
or the Wudong stuff,
Mm.
it's because I've learned it in so many different levels. Like I learned it for health, and I learned it for medicinal, but I learned it for the fighters, and I learned it for conditioning, and so it's all in there. And
Yeah.
and then I just released like 3 or 4 hours of sequences. So it's like how to make space in the body, cleanse the body, breathe, and then sequences. So the spine flexing, the nerve stretching, the nerve stretching that you love so much, that's in there. So yeah, it's all in there. I just launched it. It just went up today. It will launch next week. The Master Bundle, and that is only $5 a month, or you can pay
Oh, wow.
$49 for the year. And
Oh, wow.
that's a big deal, because I think people are, again, the information is cheap. It's the practices is what you're looking for. So time and energy, invest in it.
Yeah, the information is cheap, but the reference is priceless. It takes time to sort of integrate different things. And so having that kind of baseline information available that you can go back and reference is like, I don't, yes, information is cheap and the practice is what's, most valuable, but the reference point, is like, I can't just go down to the school anymore and be like, hey, what
Yeah.
was that thing again? Like
Yeah.
I need to be able to look it up and be like, oh, and then, back it up and watch it again and back it up and watch it, 4 or 5 times. And then, okay, and then I'll try it, because like, it's very different for me because we trained together for so long that being in your presence and mirroring you was way easier than for me than
Yeah.
watching a video, like a big adjustment for me.
Yeah.
But the reference point is worth its weight, in gold, so to speak, for me.
Yeah, the thing,
Yeah.
one of the common things that I've heard, because I have a lot of friends that do this type of work, and one of the common things is people go in and they're like, hey, I did all your videos, and, now what? And it's like, well, do them another 10,000 times and focus on one for the
Yeah.
next like 5 years. And
Right,
it's like this
yeah.
autumn sequence. I've been doing this for so long, and it's interesting. So I'm taking down the old autumn sequence and I'm putting up this new one because because it's not just for fall for me. This is like, it's a practice. Like spine flexing is
Yeah.
like you're only as healthy as your spine. So
Right.
when I do this work, but I've learned so much, and I've learned it from now. I've been on these farms and I've been doing a lot more heavy lifting, and then I've been off the grid for the past year now, just going on and off, and then I've been up in the mountains, and so just a good day of chopping wood, carrying water, and doing some plumbing and moving rocks around. All
You
this
got it.
stuff means something different, and it just taught me something differently. So just to be able to do the same sequence for 25, 30 years and find new in it, that is magical, and it only comes with doing it on a regular basis. So sure. It's like having the reference and the reminders there. But the other thing that I'm doing is all these little shorts, and I'm writing the Matt Lucas Quick Guide. I'm writing it in novel form, and I'm almost done with that. And I'm trying to. These are all the simple ideas, but I'm trying to get it up to 101 simple concepts for simplified life. But I want to make it 101 rules. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, where are we going? What moon are we in? What's the deal?
Simplification. I like it. Simplification. Yeah. That's what we're talking about right now. Yeah. Okay. So on Friday, today is Tuesday. So on Friday we began the metal Rooster Moon. So we're leaving the metal monkey and we're going into the metal Rooster Moon. So like the metal monkey, the metal Rooster Moon is in its native element. So you can't just say Rooster Moon, because when you say rooster, it means metal. It means a kind of metal. It means a yin metal. Whereas the other one was a yang metal. The monkey was yang metal moon. And so it's the monkey's the first moon of autumn. Rooster is the second moon of autumn before we hit the transition moon to winter. So we are approaching the equinox. I mean, the equinox is about 10 days from now. So we're kind of at that tipping point, where it's all yin and yang is completely vanquished, right? So the first moon of autumn is typically what's referred to as a kind of escape, right? So the first moon of autumn is escaping the pernicious heat of late summer, right? Hot and damp conditions that create like major complications health-wise, but also in our behavior, because that's kind of the choppy landing as yang sort of is descending, seasonal yang is descending and yin is coming up and kind of undermining it, right? So things are really hard to sustain if you've been really kind of busy and exaggerated through the summer. You're kind of coming in for a choppy landing. There's really no smooth way for yang to like disperse. It's usually pretty choppy. And this year in particular, because we're in this kind of introverted water rabbit year, it's difficult to maintain a kind of clarity of mind and sense of smooth action, right? There's too many emotions involved. So this kind of choppy escape from late summer's pernicious heat is basically the quality of the metal monkey. So now the second moon of autumn is the kind of more of a harvest. This is more or less the harvest moon. There's some harvesting that's happening already, right? It should be clarified in the documents. Harvesting is already happening, but like really the metal Rooster Moon or any Rooster Moon, but this particular moon is really about harvest. And you can talk about in this agricultural metaphor, there's a lot of really interesting things. There's so many different things to talk about. You could geek out on it like the pure intellect of the rooster, but it's basically to say that you're going from these kind of complicated, hot and damp sort of conditions toward a cool and dry, and that's the simplification process. So in the elevator pitch, you're basically saying that the Rooster Moon is hard pivot and necessary sacrifices, right? It is the snips that harvest the food, right? Like that is you're making clean cuts. That's what you're looking for. You're looking to really harvest what you might say is like clear thoughts and feelings. Like you're really trying to edit and clarify and refine your position. So you're not continuing to project out in the world. You're trying to bring clarity inward, right? So you're changing direction. Yes, Matt.
So does this mean like me going back to the Bay and just saying like, all right, I have this big thing and I had all these things, and then it just made me realize I'm going to switch everything. I'm going to start from a 0 point. So I'm going to sell all the gear, all the stuff, and I'm getting rid of that. Is that so? Am I And I'm just looking
I
for
think
some
anything
confirmation
that's
bias here.
sure, yeah, no, I mean, I think you can. Um, okay, so the other aspect of this, I mean, I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
Ultimately, I'm saying yes. But the other thing about this is that you're going to have a rooster moon, a metal rooster moon, in a rabbit year. And rabbits and roosters are two very different forms of communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I say it is like, can you, it's kind of a place where the architecture is a little bit more muddled, right? So what are the chances of being precise when you have a pool of interconnected feelings? So like what I would tell people is like, yeah, don't judge yourself too harshly if you're not absolutely certain, right? You kind
Yeah.
of go with your gut and like work with what you have and understand that this is, a place for moving inward. And as long as the rooster moon is used for this process of moving inward, then I think that it's in service to the general direction of the water rabbit, which is facing inward. The chi is coming inward and down, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
needing to kind of make these simplification choices and clear distinctions in order to bring yang chi inward, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically retreat time. This is in some calendars of other cultures like Rosh Hashanah. This is New Year's, that's coming up here in like a week or so for that calendar. Next moon is also like in other older calendars. There is this kind of like, okay, we're done. Like there's a lot more conclusions, pencils down, like it's over. And this kind of need for retreat, this understanding of need for retreat. So, talking about this particular moon brings up a lot because it makes me realize anyway, when I talk about these things, is like to understand that most of our modern society doesn't operate on this kind of calendar. We think the agricultural calendar is kind of quaint, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's understanding our own bias, our own prejudice, which is you should be paying attention to in this rooster moon, because rooster is like this kind of prejudicial, this is my knowledge base, this is what I know to be true, because it's kind of a survival technique, to like, I have to make clear distinctions because I'm retreating. The chi is retreating inward. So I don't want half steps, half measures here. I need to make it clean. I want a clean cut, right? So, so rooster chi is a lot about prejudice, and the calendar that we use is a banking calendar, to be honest. Like our calendar is, obviously infused with Judeo-Christian, holidays and such, but it's essentially a banking calendar, and its values are more mechanistic than they are the agricultural reflections of nature, right? So that's what we're up against in trying to look to something like the Tongshu or the Almanac, like to understand our own biases, where we're thinking that like, well, it's just a time to slow down but not stop, and the Tongshu is like, no, like these pivots are gonna feel harsher. This is when like sacrifices are real, right? So in the older calendars of China, the medieval, what they would use this time for is actually executing prisoners, right? Because this is the time to execute and to sacrifice and to reel it in.
I was just killing some people yesterday.
The analogy of that kind of governmental action or whatever would be like sacrificing, executing excess. The final excesses of summer need to be, this is it. Yeah.
I want to let you guys in on my multi-million idea. Speaking of execution, you remember when I used to talk about I want to be drawn quartered just by like little sheep? Because I think it'd be really nice in the joints. Just like, so yeah, I can charge people like $20, and I just take 4 sheep and I put them on their wrists, and I dress them like little war sheep, but they just kind of just slowly like eat their way, and you just stretch you out. Please, someone do that. I've been around a lot of sheep, and I just know that that'd be really good. Some beautiful little sheep and just hanging out.
Yeah, this could lead some dislocations though. I remember the ninja warriors, and that's how you wanted to die. You wanted to be, they'd just like surprise you one day and like execute you in public.
Oh yeah. I had a list of like these really badass, beautiful women that I wanted to send the message to when I finally got when I got a terminal illness, and
when I
then
was
just
ready.
one day they would
Yeah.
all team up and kill me in public.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then I remember writing about it, and everyone would be like, "Who was that guy?" And everyone would say, "He's obviously the best, because the best go out like that." You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
just that
Yeah.
there's only one reason. They don't know my name, but they know I'm the best.
That guy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I had an ongoing list of these amazing women. Yeah, yeah.
hmm hmm
Hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, it's these sort of, if we're continuing to sort of go for accomplishment, which is the assumption when we're talking about, talking to modern audiences, and we're talking about like the benefits of looking to the calendar, the tongshu.
Hmm.
If you're continuing to, sort of, the idea in the Rooster Moon is we can't really pretend anymore, like we can,
Hmm.
but it's going from this point on, it's going to get a lot more strenuous
Mm.
to maintain the kind of complications that we're trying to keep together in late summer. And honestly, like what happens, put a pin in your projects, basically. And anything that's pending, it should be, put a pin in it, like and have it wait, right? So
Okay.
you got to deal with your own FOMO. But if you're trying to maximize, utility and find ways to make things happen, then you're basically, what happens when a time when you're supposed to be developing clarity and you want to use it to continue like aggressive growth or advancement, it usually involves identifying those things that stand in your way. Like it usually involves this kind of critique, like this obsessive kind of critique, which is definitely something that's possible, that's available this moon. But it's only if your direction is still outward and trying to generate and accomplish, right? But
Yeah.
if you're paring back, if you're doing the simplification of less is more, then this actually can be like I want to say like even beautiful time, sublime, kind of time when you're cultivating this kind of clarity. There's a great possibility here of what I call like developing this kind of like acid, if you're on acid, or like any kind of psychedelic, and you have this absolutely completely lucid kind of clarity, that is possible naturally, no substance is required, that's available, this moon, of developing this kind of lucidity, like kind of pure sense of lucidity. And that is why about halfway at the full moon of the eighth moon, they have this thing, Chinese culture has this thing called moon festival. It's where we eat all the moon cakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, drink fermented beverages, rice wine, and celebrate and do poetry and like, and go into these sublime places, because we shouldn't forget that like Chinese tradition, the culture that Han culture has taken as its own and started to maintain and develop and celebrate, is a lunar culture. This is a lunar calendar. So this is the return of the moon, into prominence. When you're coming to this equinox place and you're like, it's fully back. There's no more. There's no question now that the moon is now what's dominant. And everything. From the Chinese tradition, Ming would often say, it's generally just understood that everything that's beautiful about life is lunar, is this kind of transitory and luminous beauty and an enjoyment of life, So like you step back, you make those distinctions of all the worldly going outward and all that, and you step back so that you can actually really enjoy and feel satisfaction, in your life, right? For the things that have been done, and stop thinking about the things that you wish it coulda, woulda, shoulda, or like still want to, or all that stuff. It's like you're putting those things down, kind of pencil down moment. So
that's what we said. That's what we
thing
said
that
last
people-
month, right? Which was, it was like, you harvest your stuff, but like now we're going into winter, so see what you want to preserve. And
True.
it's just kind of what are you canning and what are you throwing away, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, these are even sharper distinctions, like not just like I might have had a resource that came to me but I don't have a place for it, so then
Yeah.
it's a distribution, and it becomes this kind of like really going down to the pure essentials, like the pure essentials. That's like that metaphor of like purifying yang qi, to the point where it becomes like luminous, like a crystal, like it has no color or shades of red to it. It's generally understood that on a cosmological level, they talk about yang as this kind of crystalline presence, and then it gets tainted by desire, like going into the world, right? So when you're bringing it back and you want to store it in a place that keeps you warm through the winter, you want to clarify that. You want to clarify it as much as possible, get all the color out of it, right? In that sort of meditative spacing where, you're separating the essence of movement from desire to do specific things, right? You're just coming back to maybe breath, but even less than that, right? So you're coming back to this, meditative practice of like a Zhuang or like the Dzogchen traditions, which is all weaved into the almanac from Ming. Then there's this kind of pure luminescence of movement that's the thing you want to internalize, right? And that's the thing you want to kind of keep you warm and inspired, through the winter season. So there's a returning right now, in this like, and it's actually very lyrical and poetic, this like the Jade ladies, are back, like, which means that the feminine spirits, the dakinis, all these different inspirational qualities have returned, they and they're replacing these Jade ladies are replacing the tired masculine spirits that came in the spring, right? So they're worn out, right? They came in the spring and they come with all this inspiration. Oh, this is what you're going to do. These are the things you're going to see. And it's like bright and encouraging. And then you go through summer and you burn it out, right? And so you want to send them away and invite the sort of yin spirits to come that encourage this kind of gentleness, because you're tired. You should recognize that you're tired, so it's time to, start making these distinctions and utilizing resources in such a way that you can continue or like by going inward and store, and stepping back from activity and more toward, hibernation, the hibernative qualities, and the sharing of these sort of like interpersonal spaces, these interdependent spaces, like that we'll be getting into in the dog moon and the pig moon, right? So this is the time when you're sort of setting up the boundaries so that who's in, who's out, right? And then you'll be working on that next moon, and then it's just pure rest, so harvest is a busy time. I'm not going to say that people shouldn't be working at all. It's just that simplify. You got to pare it back. I mean, in an industrial society, like we're expected to be, we're in the machine calendar, we're in the banker's calendar, right? So we're in the merchant calendar. So we're supposed to be following a machine rhythm. But this is, and money never sleeps, right? So like, but this is an agricultural rhythm, which is rhythms of nature itself, right? So, and our rhythms, because we're part of nature, that's the idea, right? So everything that we can do to sort of reclaim space, encourage spaciousness, and then continue that harvesting process that we were talking about last moon of like making distinctions of what to keep and what to toss and compost. Now it's like there are sacrifices involved. There are more pivots involved, right? And if you haven't done any preparation before this point, this is where it gets tricky, because it's like you can't really prepare when you're pivoting, right? You're just pivoting, and like things might fly out, and it could get really messy, and communication could be rough, and like that's the thing that's potentially worrisome about this moon in the rabbit year, given the fact that we're in a machine calendar, a banker's and merchant calendar, where we're not recognizing this kind of natural capacity to step back. Like these are things that we should feel naturally if we're human, We should feel this kind of desire to step back more, and this sort of yin is descending. This idea, yin is descending from heaven, and like we're like children that are being put to sleep. Like finish your dinner and get yourself ready, and brush your teeth. Like we're kind of in that space. That's the sort of poetical quality of the almanac.
What is your? So what's who's made for this? Who's made for this? Who's the buried or married?
So the question on that is like who would I choose? I think I would choose the people who might be our models. As I put it like this, would be the rat and the ox, right? Mm. The rat, because the rat knows where we're going. The rat knows, okay, things are closing. The rat's paying attention, right? So we should follow our rat brothers and sisters, in terms of they're bred for conservation, So in this time of where we're supposed to be more proactive in pivoting toward conservation, rats are already ahead of us, in that way. And then in terms of the ox is just very consistent, and so in a time where we may need to be very flexible, if we're making necessary sacrifices, they can be the one to help sort of substantiate that sacrifice. So those are the two that stand out most for me at this pivot, at this time of like hard pivots and necessary sacrifice. And then anything that's like family oriented is going to be able to be flexible enough to hang with it. But you could, there's not too many, your snakes are also kind of a sleeper, they're not very obvious, in their capacity to adapt, but right now, they'll feel more comfortable in adapting. Right. It'll be a little bit more familiar for them, a bit more familiar space. And dragons, there's a point in time in the calendar where dragons and rainbows go to sleep, right? And we're getting close to that, right? So this is the time where you see dragons sparingly and rainbows almost not at all. But like this is the time when both of those are going to be unavailable until the spring. So these distinctions and that kind of pulling inward is not just like on our individual level, they're cosmological, which is the reason why we should do it, right? Because if we're not being so strenuous and trying to keep something in a forward motion, then we have greater chance for longevity, which means at least in the Chinese calendar, not so much that we are old, but that we die. When we die complete, that we actually finish our business. But if we're out there starting things when we should be cutting it off and pulling it in, then we're much more liable to die incomplete, right? And that's the term for that is ghost in the Chinese.
That was when I came out here. I was going to do this thing, but really it's like we just kind of talked up ideas. But it was like, nah, this isn't time. And so I just kind of went and was just kind of writing and then doing the, and then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get into the qigong practice and then go visit. It's interesting because I'm like actually talking about a fresh start. It's like I'm repeating a cycle from when I was 12. And other than but this time I'm not doing it on a crazy amount of drugs surrounded by strippers and murderers. So this is now I'm doing things. Now I'm doing things on purpose, and I'm not waking up in random vehicles and random parking lots, so it's kind of like a return back to this reason why martial arts and this practice was so important to me. And the breath and the qigong, but it's also back to the old days of I'm just this guy that's spending a lot of time alone training all the time. Like when you first met me, I was just calloused knuckles and just was my intensity was strong, but this time my intensity is softer. It's more it's just different. It's like I'm getting to repeat this cycle, but I'm doing it now actually from a different mindset, which is no longer from being fearful of like what is coming around the corner like in 10 minutes, you know what I mean? And when I remember that the old days when I would see like, you know, you're looking at the blinds and, you know, at your front window and you see like lights coming in, like it just, that used to just bring up, I was like, who is, you know, because I remember this one time I saw these lights coming in and someone was like, you know, something doesn't feel right about those lights. So I just stand up and I leave this house, right? I just stood up and just left. I'm a kid. And then right when I leave, I just see a guy reaching under the kitchen cabinet and pulling out a shotgun, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm out of here."
Yeah, I'm out of here.
Like, but it's like now when I see the lights, it's like now I'm grateful for the visitor, or I'm, you know, it's like it's totally different, and so it's been a time of like in really, really, really intense gratitude around the transformation of the lens that I've been able to see, like the dynamic range.
Right.
But it all goes back to this one practice, is just, you know, put it back down, shake it off, like regroup, you know, whatever happens, find that clean center.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is that coming back to this notion of like when we purge seasonal heat, when we actually purge it, right? Instead of trying to sustain it and embed it, you know, in our, and basically get sick and die, you know, like when we're not embedding seasonal heat, when we allow it to disperse and we purge seasonal heat, the notion is that gentleness comes naturally in this kind of spontaneous inspiration as well, because it's the way I describe it is that we create a spaciousness that then yin descending naturally fills. And so there's a reason why you have this set of retrospective quality, I think, which has a lot to do with this, you know, appreciation of gratitude and this renewal of inspiration. So there's an inspirational quality seasonally at both spring and fall. And in the spring, it has a yang flavor. Like, I can't wait to get out there, you know, like that is the masculine spirits pushing us, inviting us forward, encouraging us to go and to move, right? To meet, you know, rising yang. And so when we think about the inspirational quality of yin, it's retrospective. It's, you know, gratitude. It's, you know, appreciation. It's stillness. It's, you know, it's what's called with the hexagram 20 in the Joe-E, which is called observance. It's to just observe, like how life naturally dances, right? So, and yes, there are decisions you can make from that observance, but the observance itself doesn't require us to make decisions, right? It is just a place where we can go. And that includes like our own life. So this retrospective quality of returning yin, this place of returning yin, is deeply inspirational. It's amazing right now, especially.
You know, what I was thinking about was like, I remember, you know, it's like right now it's like there's revelation after revelation after revelation after awakening after observing after all these things that have been going on, and even with like clients and people that I'm talking to. But one of the most like one of the better pieces of advice that I've sort of intuited is, just because that happens and just because you're like, whoa, it doesn't mean you should go do it right now. It means, you know, it's kind of like what I was telling you when I'd be around a lot of people and they're like, I want to live on land, I want to get land. And I was like, I kind of want to go just kind of see what it's like to live on land for a little bit. I don't want to go buy it right out of the gate, because I'm seeing what it means to like have that revelation, want to go do something big, and then and next thing you know, you're not free. You're no longer free. You're trapped by the revelation, as opposed to you let that say, you know what, there's an energy here, let me just let the yin soak in and let's see kind of what grows out of that, as opposed to I gotta do it. And so I've been talk about a thing of gratitude of just like knowing how many times I've done that up until I was like 30, 35, and just, you know, got my teeth kicked in, and now I'm like, you know, and I'm just gonna poke the thing and see what it does. I always say, poke it, smell your finger. If it attacks you, hit it, and then just wait for it again. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what's been going on.
You know, a lot of people would talk about the chi of rooster as like, critical and hard nosed, and and how can this be lucid, and I think that lucidity is actually a part of that kind of roostery quality, if it's not focused too much on all the details all the time, especially now, in a rabbit year, which is definitely much more intuitive. So I think as long as you are kind of making these distinctions, and that's what rooster as a seasonal chi, as an expression of the eighth moon, rather than talking about somebody who's born a rooster and like the tendencies that they have from a fate standpoint or perspective. We're talking about like the seasonal qualities of the year as an autumnal figure. It's like, this is the time to like get into the reflex of less is more, as like an intelligent response, as an inspired response to the season of that kind of like really clean realism, because if you don't, it will be very difficult moon. This would be a very difficult moon because there is a pattern, particularly when you're talking about like Ming had this phrase, and I'll just close with this, had this phrase of that our culture preaches hope, but teaches hopelessness. And so you have this great capacity, this moon, that if there's always this kind of deconstructive, but in an outward way instead of going inward. So I'm deconstructing as a rooster. It's like taking things apart to know where I can put them so I can step back, so I can make those distinctions. But if I'm trying to aggressively expand still, then, I am creating this tension, particularly in this year, whereby I might have this kind of experience of oscillating between hope and hopelessness. And the capacity for developing desperation then becomes astronomically high, especially as you're going into the next two moons after this. So, man, take the pivot, even if it means taking, a big loss, like actually embrace the pivot. I think you'll be glad you did.
That's a lot.
You have the capacity right now, if you're not under a significant amount of worldly pressure, like be grateful. Just like actually remember, we're in a water rabbit year. Spaciousness and like empowerment comes from like retreat. Yeah. That's where empowerment actually is in retreat. In a water rabbit year, if you're constantly having to be pressed out forward and be in the front of the line and constantly making it work, is very stressful. It's been very stressful for you all year long. Even dragons and horses, high energy, they get worn down very fast, So if exhaustion is something that's happening for any of the 12 animals right now, you should really listen to your exhaustion. That's been the case all through the late summer, but now that we're in this place, if you're still pushing, like, you're gonna hit a breaking point and it won't be pretty, So, like, listen to your exhaustion. Say no, say less. Like, actually let it go. Pencils down.
Word.
Try it.
Thank you.
Just try it.
All right, everyone, get on the site. Again, you can either do the premium, or you can actually get in there and just do just qigong. And
that's great, man. I look forward to seeing the new, because I had that injury a few days ago, and I did spine flexing and all better.
Oh yeah, it's me. I'm always like, I was just teaching some people that own like a chain of gyms too, right? And I'm like, remember, this is an exercise. I tell everybody this is an exercise. This isn't, and they're just like, they call me up the next day, like, I'm so sore. And I'm like, told you, that's why we only did 3 of everything. Y'all are wanting to do 3 sets of 10. You wouldn't be able to walk for a week. Like, even though it's not exercise, it's still building a capacity and a heat. And and so, and it's funny because I'll just be sitting there and doing some of the work, but me, I rarely ever sweat, but I'm like sweating, and it's and because it is about packing the heat inside the bones and moving the spine, and just it's just one of those practices that especially up in that crisp mountain air, it's just magnificent, give or take the mosquitoes, I'm grateful every day that I was able to just say, I don't want to do it. I want to go do this, and then share this practice that has been a go-to of mine for decades. And so everyone go on the site, get it, and it will be up this week. Other than that, man, I'll see you soon.
Great. I'm super stoked. Yeah. We need to. I'm super stoked to reconnect and to practice together again, man. I'm stoked.
Yeah. All right, man. Maybe one more round of applause.